Hey guys, welcome to our second night of Beers Without Beards. Grace White's here. I'm the head of partnerships at Hop Culture and also the creator of our Women in Craft Beer Festival, Beers Without Beards, empowered by Bumble. I'm super excited to kick off our second night here with the ladies of the Two Roads QA team. We had a chance to team up with Two Roads last year during our Breaking Beer Year's beer dinner at Beers Without Beards 2019. So really stoked to bring them back this time for an immersory sensory workshop. What's so amazing about Two Roads, besides the plethora of fantastic beers that they have, is that they have women working in all different operations at the brewery. So from sales to marketing to their whole QA team. So we're going to hear from three women tonight that are really holding down the fort and rocking it out. I wanted to quickly introduce everyone, and you can see their names up on the screen as well. But joining us tonight, we have Karen Stengel. She's the Director of Quality Assurance at Two Roads. Jen Pesavento, she's the Sensory Program Manager. And then Ryan Galligan, hopefully she can jump in here. She's the Quality Lab Tech. So you're going to be seeing a lot of different actions coming from them. Basically, what we're doing tonight is this team of ladies will show you how the pros taste beer, how they actually do it in the brewery, the steps that they go through, the tips, the tricks, essentially something that you can take back home with you and replicate at home, so you know exactly how the pros like to taste their beer. So without further ado, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to let Jen and Karen and Ryan take it away and take you guys through this workshop, and then I'll be back at the end to moderate a Q&A session. So if you guys have questions, I know this is a lot getting into some more technical aspects of beer, which we love. So if you have any questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to drop them in the comments box. We'll be monitoring those and we can pull them back up at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to get out of here and pass it over to you guys. Go ahead, Jen.
Hey, Kenny, we're ready for the presentation. If you could bring that up for us.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. So glad you all could join us tonight. I hope you're able to procure your shopping list items. If not, there's still a bunch to learn, and you can really enjoy using all of these skills out in the wild when you go and have some beers with your friends later. So let's jump in. So tonight we're going to talk about beer's main ingredients and how they can influence some of the flavors and aromas that you're perceiving in your beer. And we have a couple examples that we'll be able to go through. The first one is Too Juicy Hazy IPA from Two Roads Brewing Company. And we'll talk about the sensory panelists' description of that particular beer, as well as the key attributes that to look for in a hazy, juicy style beer. And our second example will be Roadsmary's Baby Rum Barrel Aged Pumpkin Ale, very fitting for the season. And again, we'll get the Two Roads sensory panelist description of that beer, as well as attributes to look for in a style beer that maybe has a few more ingredients than normal for what we expect in a typical beer session. And then we'll wrap up with a summary of some points that are good for taking out into the world after this. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have with Grace's help at moderation. So the main ingredients in beer can have a huge impact on the final product. And we're going to talk about those right now. One of them, the main one, the base of all beer is water. And the source of the water that's used in your beer can contribute different off flavors, depending on whether it comes from the surface or the ground. And for example, a groundwater might have different mineral components that it'll bring forth compared to surface water. And there might also be some seasonal variations. So the source of your water can definitely influence the flavor of your beer. Next up, we have malt. And this is where we get color, aroma, and mouthfeel. We'll take you through all of those areas in this presentation. And the color specifically, for example, is based on the amount of time that grain spends in the kiln when it's being prepared to be boiled down to extract all of the sugars that end up in the wort part of the beer. The next ingredient is hops. And historically, these contribute to bitterness, but are often nowadays used for aroma, especially some tropical, fruity, or floral aromas in some of our beers that we'll be experiencing later. The high and low concentrations of chemicals called alpha acids in these hops are an important part of the addition, especially in the part where you're boiling down the malt to make the wort, because they will impart some antimicrobial properties that'll keep the beer from spoiling after being stored long term. The next ingredient and the workhorse of the beer recipe is the yeast itself. And this is the part that creates the alcohol and other flavor byproducts. And different strains of yeast are used to make different styles of beer. So your beer will taste differently if it was made with a yeast, for example, that is a British ale strain versus a Belgian ale strain versus a German Pilsner or lager strain. So all of those different factors can influence the final flavor and aroma of your product. And last, one of the other ingredients that we'll experience in Roadsmary's Baby are adjuncts. And these are just a bucket list of additional ingredients. They can be spices, they can be fruits, they can be vegetables. And you'll get to see as we walk through the Roadsmary's Baby beer how brewing a beer with adjuncts can really add to the flavors and aromas that you'll perceive when you're drinking your beer. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jen, our sensory program manager, who will walk you through more of the science and process behind sensory evaluation.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Jen Pesavento. I run our sensory program here at the brewery, and it's really a fun place to work. Everybody always thinks that all we do all day is drink, but we really evaluate our beer, and that's, again, here what we're going to teach you how to do. I want to show you all the tricks of the trade. So first up, I'm going to tell you what is sensory and why do we do it. So at its most basic, when you smell or taste something, it immediately triggers one or more memories. These memories can be attribute specific, or they can be more emotional and situation based. So our employees, we have a group of employees who are participating in our sensory panel, and they've been trained to take those situation based memories and turn them into attribute specific memories. So for example, say you smell a beer and it reminds you of visiting your grandparents when you're a little kid. So you think about, okay, why does it remind me of my grandparents and visiting them? All right, well, every time I went to visit them, we'd go apple picking and then we'd make apple pie. So what are the different things that I smell when I go apple picking and I make apple pie? You know, do I smell fresh, crisp apples? Do I smell spices, vanilla? Do I smell maybe a little bit of like burning smell from the oven, like a little smoky character? So what I'm going to do then, I've kind of just taken all of that memory and thought about all of the different things in it that have aroma. Now I'm going to go back into my beer and smell it again and think to myself, okay, which of these things is present in this beer? And okay, so I'm smelling it again and oh, it's the apples. I'm getting this juicy apple character from the beer. So that's where this whole big memory came from. It's just that one aroma triggered this full fleshed out memory. And that's what happens with all of us. We smell something and it'll trigger an emotion or it'll trigger a situation that we've been in, specific memory. And we train our panelists on how to smell different attributes. Sometimes we'll spike beer with different chemical compounds. Sometimes we'll literally just sit around as a group and eat an apple and eat strawberries and describe what those all taste and smell like to us. And that helps us hone those sense memories. So the next time I go to smell that apple-y beer, the first thing I'll remember is apple. It won't be that big sense memory. That'll still come up for me, but I'll know very quickly that the attribute I'm smelling is apple. And it's interesting too, because everyone is a little bit different. So when I might smell apple, someone else might smell it as pear. They're very similar attributes, very similar aromas, and everybody has different thresholds. So maybe I'm smelling spices in a beer, but my neighbor, my friend, isn't smelling that. And it could just be that they can't smell it at all, or they just haven't had enough exposure to it to be able to pick it out. So as we go through these beers today, we're going to take you through those descriptions. And if you don't smell exactly what our panel smells, that's okay. Our panel's been well trained and they've honed in on all these aromas. And you just might smell different things than we do. And that's wonderful. That's what makes sensory and flavor so exciting, that we all get something a little bit different. So every day, our panelists are evaluating beer and seltzer and all of the fun things that we brew here. And we do that to make sure that each of our products meets our specifications and tastes great out in the market, tastes great to all of our customers. And sensory, again, it's more than just drinking beer. It's methodically evaluating a sample. So what you're doing, I've made this little meme on the right. It starts out with you're drinking your beer. And of course, it's a great experience. We all love drinking our beer, but then you smell your beer. You get a little bit more information and your brain lights up a little bit more. Then you swirl it and smell it, and oh my God, I can suddenly smell so much more. What's going on? Then you're going to do retronasal aroma, which we'll teach you in a little bit, where you're going to plug your nose, take a sip and breathe out your nose, and you're going to get all this amazing information, and it's going to blow your mind, I promise. And you're going to have this whole new experience of beer. And you can apply this to everything that you smell and taste. We just particularly love to do it with beer. So I'm going to take you through some tips on how to prep your palate, and then we're going to crack our beer. So first up, it's always easiest to smell and taste your beer with a clean palate. And what that means is you don't really want to eat or drink in the 30 to 60 minutes before you're evaluating a sample. You want to try not to wear chapstick, lipstick, perfumes, and things like that, because they can inhibit your ability to smell things clearly. And, if you do need to just refresh your senses, drink some water, eat a cracker, maybe some bread, that can help to really cleanse your palate and refresh you. And then if your mood is really great, it can affect the way you perceive a beer. So a really good mood will make you more favorably evaluate something, and a really bad mood can make you think like, oh, this beer is terrible. It doesn't meet the targets at all. Your mood and environment affect a great deal of what you're perceiving. And most importantly, and this truly is the most important tip for everything we're doing tonight, relax and enjoy. Beer is about enjoying, and we want you guys to just have a great experience. And this is designed to help enhance that experience. Now, what you're going to do is crack your Two Juicy and pour it into your glass and follow along. So Ryan is going to be showing you all of the steps that I'll be talking you through. She's amazing. She's going to be great. So I'll give you a second to pour your beer, and then we'll jump into visual assessment. Excellent. So once your beer is poured, you want to take a quick look at the foam on your beer. Is it thick? Is it thin? Is it sticking around? Or is it kind of just dissipating quickly? Depending on the style of the beer, and a lot of depending on the malt bill of your beer, like Karen was talking about, that foam is going to be heavily affected. So sour beers tend to have a very quickly disappearing foam, seltzers too. And beers like this tend to have a really nice foam that stick around for a while. And your Hefeweizens, for example, those will have a big, thick, pillowy foam that sticks around for a long time. So give that beer a swirl too, and that'll help generate a little bit more foam. And you're just going to look at what's the quantity there. Then you're going to hold your beer up to a bright, soft light, like a window, overhead lighting like we've gotten here today. And you're going to look through your beer into that light to evaluate the color and the haze. Color and haze are best evaluated against a soft, bright light because you don't want it to be too harsh of a light source. If something like a flashlight is going to throw too much contrast at your beer and throw off the color a little bit. As you're looking through your beer into the light, if you want to hold your finger up behind the beer or a pen, that can help you assess the haze amount. So how much is that pen or your finger obscured? That'll give you a really good indication of the level of haze in your beer. Our panelists in Sensory Panel actually have a little push light that they use with a black strip on it, and that black strip does the same thing. It gives us a really nice way to measure the amount of haze in our beer. So visual is just as simple as that. Next, we're going to jump into aroma. So we're getting into the real meat of it now, all the fun stuff, in my opinion. Aroma is my favorite part of sensory evaluation. So we break down aroma into two distinct parts, orthonasal aroma and retronasal aroma. So orthonasal aroma is the perception of aroma by sniffing through your nose. So it's how we always think about smelling. You bring something up to your nose and you give it a sniff. Retronasal aroma is the perception of aroma emanating from inside of your mouth. So in both ways, all those aromatic compounds that are in everything that you're smelling and eating are reaching your olfactory bulb. And your olfactory bulb is involved in the sense of smell. It processes all of the different compounds that are detected throughout your nasal cavity. And it's sending more information deeper into your brain to help bring up those memories for you. So it's signaling that different compounds and different aromas are there, and then your brain is kind of processing and bringing memories up to the forefront. So again, orthonasal is how we normally think about smelling, and retronasal is that other way of smelling. And you're doing it all the time. It's why when you have a cold and your nose is really stuffed up, everything tastes so bland. It's actually because you're not getting any aroma from your food when you're chewing it. So we separate aroma out from taste as well. We're going to cover taste in a couple of minutes. And taste is really all about what your tongue can perceive. So in aroma, we're focusing just on what the aromatic compounds are that you're smelling. So first step is the pass by. In this step, you're going to gently swirl the beer and pass it by your nose while taking a short sniff. And you can do that about 2 times. We try to limit each of these steps to about 2 times maximum. That way you're not overwhelming your sense of smell. Next up is the swirled sniff. So you'll give it a little swirl and take a 1-second sniff, and then a swirl and a 2-second sniff. And we consider our 1-second sniff to be a quick sniff and our 2-second to be a long sniff. And it doesn't sound very long, but the reason we do a 2-second sniff max is, again, so we don't overwhelm our sense of smell. When you take those really long sniffs in, it's actually way more information than you can process at once. Now we're going to get into the covered sniff. And this one's going to give you a whole lot of information, a whole lot of aromatic compounds to smell. And this one, with each of these subsequent steps, you're getting more and more information to your brain about what you're smelling. And it's really convenient because it lets you compartmentalize all of the things that you're smelling. So you can start off by getting that general impression with the pass by, like, oh, maybe it's a little citrusy. Then in the swirled sniff, you're like, okay, I know it's a little citrusy. What kind of citrus am I smelling? Or am I smelling anything else? Now in the covered sniff, think about what you smelled before, and then go into this one looking for something new. So you're going to fully cover your beer. You really want to cap the beer with your hand and swirl it for 10 seconds. Once those 10 seconds are up, you'll bring it to your nose completely covered, uncover it, and give it a long 2-second sniff. And it's important to not uncover it until you get it to your nose, because you're breaking a lot of aromatic compounds out of solution. You're breaking them out of your beer and capturing them in that empty space in your glass, concentrating the aroma. And if you take your hand off of it down here, you're just letting that out into the air. If you take it off up here, then you suddenly have all of this aroma going straight to your brain, and it's awesome. So in that covered sniff, you're going to get a lot of information all at once. You're going to get a whole lot of aromas. And it's okay again to do this twice, but give yourself a little break in between it so you have time to think about all of the different things, all the different sensory inputs you just got. Next up is retronasal aroma. I promised to blow your mind, and hopefully I'm delivering here on this stage. So retronasal aroma, again, it's that aroma emanating from your mouth. So you're gonna plug your nose, take a sip of beer to coat your mouth, and let it warm up for a few seconds. Then, once that's done, you're gonna swallow the beer, unplug your nose, and breathe out your nose. So you're forcing all of those aromatic compounds up to your olfactory bulb, and you're going to be experiencing aroma in a way that you do on a regular basis, but not in this formal of a setting. So normally, the first time someone does this step, they're like, wait, this is really weird. I didn't get anything. So try it again and see if it helps. It's easy. You'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. And what you'll find in this stage, some people get a really strong hit of aroma. It gives them even more than they ever got before. And some people get something completely different. Like you might smell pine and resin character in your orthonasal. And in this step, you might get a big punch of pineapple. Or you might get that pine and resin in your first stages. And in this one, it's just really, really strong pine and resin again. So for some people, again, you get it differently. And for some people, it's just more intense. This is also a really helpful stage for people who find they have a really hard time smelling things. I've had many panelists come to me and be like, I can't do it. I can't be a sensory panelist because I can't smell anything. So we teach them retronasal aroma, and they're suddenly really excited because they can smell things again. And they're like, oh, I do this all the time. I just never thought about it this way. So it can be really fun. And again, don't stress. If you can't smell your beer well, just take a quick 60-second, 1-minute break. That's going to help reset your sense of smell and just sit back and relax. Powering through that moment and over sniffing is only going to make it more difficult to smell. We've all been there. You take a sniff and you're like, what was that? Sniff again. And then you sniff again and again. And you're like, oh my God, I can't smell anything anymore. Just sit back, relax, and let it refresh. And you'll be good to go again. Now we're going to go into taste. And clearly I messed up part of the slide. I'm sorry. So there are thousands of aromas, but we're going to talk now about the basic tastes. These basic tastes are the things that your tongue can perceive. Your tongue can't detect passion fruit or pineapple, but your tongue can detect sweet and sour. So here are our basic tastes. First up is bitter. Think orange rind and like the white pith of a citrus fruit. Cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, especially the like leafy part of broccoli. Really dark chocolate can be very bitter as well. Baker's chocolate, that 100% pure chocolate, is very bitter. Then up is sour, that tart, sour character that you get from lemons and limes, the juice and flesh of them. Then, candies like Sour Patch Kids, Warheads candies, different acids, those are all sour. Then up is salty, which is where our Goza comes into play. So salty, think like a mouthful of beach water. Most common in Goza style beers, they're brewed with salt and coriander, which just give them this really nice, bright, refreshing character along with its sour character. Then sweetness is another one that we can detect on our tongues, and that's sugar, honey, candies, and umami. So umami is the latest one to join the taste sensation world. That's that savory, meaty note that's typically found in soy sauce and mushrooms, liquid aminos, things like that all have that nice, rich umami character. We also cover metallic and mineral in this step, and that includes metallic, like think of like putting pennies, what pennies taste like, or tinfoil. And mineral, you can think fancy mineral water or like licking a rock. Sommeliers, wine tasters, will actually train on different regions of wine by licking rocks from those different regions. It's pretty cool. All right, so let's get into how we taste our beer in this taste step. So you'll plug your nose and take a sip of beer to coat your mouth. Then, while you keep your nose plugged, just think through the different basic tastes of the beer and think about their intensity. Am I getting bitterness? Am I getting salty, sweet, sour, umami, metallic, and mineral? And at very first, just think about, are they present? Don't worry about the intensity right away. You'll get there as you go on and you practice detecting these more. And sometimes you'll just get bitterness, sometimes just sweetness, and sometimes you'll get all of them. It can be very interesting to see what beers have those different complexities in taste. And one of the reasons we plug our noses. So why are we doing this over and over again? Well, in retronasal aroma, it's to capture aromatic compounds in our mouth and force them to our olfactory bulb. And in taste, it's really to prevent our brains from tricking us. So we plug our nose to cut off our sense of smell and to prevent our brain from anticipating certain tastes based on the aromas present. So if our brains smell vanilla, they automatically think something's going to be sweet. Same if our brain smells pine, we're likely to think and anticipate that our beer is going to be bitter. But say you have a beer that's super piney in aroma, but was sweetened with a bunch of lactose. So you plug your nose and you taste it, and all of a sudden you just get all of this sweet character. So your brain would have anticipated bitterness and probably told you, hey, this is going to be bitter. So you're going to detect that because our brains are kind of bullies. They really like to tell us what's there and trick all of our senses sometimes. But really, in reality, maybe there's no bitterness actually present there. So you just plug your nose and it eliminates that bias that our brain likes to put in play. Next up, you need your candy. So hopefully you were able to procure some candy. What you're going to do here is choose a piece of candy. If you can do it without looking at it, that's even better. Depending on what kind of candy you have, that may or may not be possible. So choose a piece of candy, but don't smell it. Now plug your nose and chew up the candy. While you're chewing, think about the basic tastes that you're experiencing. Is it bitter? Is it sweet, salty, sour? Hopefully it's not salty. That would be a little strange for candy, but who knows? All sorts of candy exists. When you're done chewing that up and thinking about those basic tastes, unplug your nose and breathe out your nose. And now, what aromas are you experiencing and perceiving? So first, you're just getting those basic tastes, but now you're probably getting a huge hit of aroma. Maybe it was sweet at first, and now it smells like strawberries, or it was sour, and now it smells like lemons. If you have jelly beans, maybe before it was kind of a little bit sweet, and maybe you had a touch of spiciness, and now it smells like cinnamon now that you've unplugged your nose. Feel free to do this a couple times. It's really fun. I love this step. It's probably my favorite part. I have some jelly beans off to the side so I can eat some later and do this later because I'm a big sensory nerd. I'm in the right job. So I'll give you another second to have some fun with that. And again, this is where aroma and taste come together. It helps to break them apart so you can really clearly experience the difference between aroma and taste. And again, when they come together, you unplug that nose, you have that whole component of flavor. And this is what we're always thinking about. We're experiencing things as flavor all the time. And in sensory, we pull them apart so we can really go through our beer with a fine-toothed comb and pick out all of the different attributes that are present and make sure that all the attributes that should be there are. All right, now we're going to go into the last but not least step in our sensory evaluation method, which is mouthfeel. Here at Two Roads, we focus on the following sensations. That's the wrong button. All right, so we focus on carbonation, and that's that bubbly, prickly sensation of all of the bubbles in your beer. Body, which is the viscosity of the liquid. So, for example, Water, soda, seltzers typically have a very thin mouthfeel. And molasses, for example, a lot of stouts too have very thick mouthfeels. There's also milkshake IPAs, which have a lot of thick mouthfeel too. Mouth-watering is that unstoppable rush of saliva, most often felt with sour beers. Astringency is when your mouth dries out, like you're chewing on cotton balls or you drink over-steeped black tea. Alcohol is the warming or burning sensation after swallowing beer or spirits. Like you take a shot of tequila and you get that burn. That's alcohol warming. And then spicy, like I alluded to before, it's that burning sensation that you get on your tongue. And it's most often associated with hot peppers, but you can also get it with cinnamon jelly beans. And mouthfeel is all about sensations. So all of these, some of them can be linked to or come up most often with some other tastes or some other aromas. Like usually when you're going to get an astringency out of a beer, it's also bitter, but they don't have to be married together like that. So in mouthfeel, it's all about sensations. So to evaluate your mouthfeel, you're going to sip a moderate amount of beer and hold it in your mouth. Then you're going to wag your tongue through it. And what you're doing there is you're generating you're generating bubbles in the carbonation, and you're also feeling the viscosity of the beer. You know, how much does your tongue drag through it? Is it thin like water or thicker like molasses? Then you'll swallow the beer to evaluate the alcohol warming, mouth watering, and drying astringency. It can take up to 15 seconds to fully develop astringency in your mouth. So be sure to give yourself some time to evaluate it. Swallow that beer and sit back a little bit. See if your mouth continues to dry out or if the mouth-watering sensation continues as well. And so that's our sensory method. That's what we do here with every batch of beer. We run all of them through that process to see, does it taste how it should? And now Ryan is going to take you through what we think these beers should taste like. So she's going to take you through Too Juicy, and then we're going to taste a second beer together, and she's going to talk us through that sensory method again. Thanks.
All right, everybody. I hope everyone enjoyed their Too Juicy so far. And now we're going to take a little look at what our panelists are typically finding from this beer. So just again, Too Juicy. Take a little sip. All right. So as you see here, our panelists are typically finding that Too Juicy has a golden color with an opaque haze and a white foam. So if we take a look back at it, we can go ahead and see golden color and opaque haze. You can't really see through it too much. And white foam. For aroma, our panelists are typically finding that it's tropical beer. So oranges, melons, sweet candy-like characteristics, maybe a little bit of floral, and some low solvent. Solvent may be similar to paint thinner if you need something to relate that to. And occasionally some onion and garlic. The onion and garlic we're typically finding is a characteristic related to the hop component. And for taste, low to moderate sweet that gently lingers, a moderate bitter that slightly lingers, and low mineral. And for mouthfeel, a medium body, low astringency with slightly warming, and a moderate carbonation. So those may or may not be characteristics that you picked up on when you evaluated this beer with us, but don't worry. Our panelists have been doing this for a long time. So we've been training them. They've been practicing this skill for quite a bit. So if you're not experiencing that right away, it's okay. Enjoy your beer anyway. It'll be something that you can hone in on over time. And if you're not experiencing the panel tonight with our Too Juicy and you're using a different hazy or juicy IPA, here are some key attributes that you might experience from a different hazy or juicy IPA. For visual, strata light amber in color, with a cloudy haze. So as we're familiar with a hazy, juicy IPA, we're looking for that cloudy haze. For aroma, you might get a varying malt aroma, some sweet aromas. You might get some high hop aromas. You might even get some low ones. Most often juicy or tropical citrus and some pine or floral character as well. And in taste, a low bitterness. And for mouthfeel, soft, pillowy, thin to medium body. All right, now we're gonna dive into Roadsmary's Baby. It's the perfect beer for this time of year. So just to do a little recap with you, we're gonna walk through the sensory method a little bit briefly, and then we're gonna go ahead and evaluate this beer together. Jen's pouring it up right now, so go ahead and pour yours up. After pouring, evaluate the foam on your beer. Hold your beer up to a soft light and evaluate that visual. Is it hazy? Doesn't look hazy to me. What do you think, Jen? Nope. Our beer is pretty clear. Hold your beer up to that soft light and get that visual. Move on to that aroma now. You'll be doing the pass by, the swirled sniff, first doing a 1 second and then a 2 second. Then the covered sniff, which I really love to do. Give that a good 10 seconds or so. And the retro nasal. I mean, who doesn't love the retro nasal, right? You're putting beer in your mouth and drinking it. So for taste, plug your nose and take a sip, coat your mouth. Think about the intensity. Is it bitter? Is it sour? Is it sweet, salty? Are you getting any umami or metallic mineral? And for mouthfeel, take a sip of a moderate amount of beer, wag your tongue through the way we did before. I probably looked pretty silly doing it. And feel that viscosity. Is it thick? Is it thin? Are you getting the carbonation bubbles? Are they doing a little dance on your tongue? And then swallow the beer and evaluate the alcohol warming, mouth-watering, and astringency. Don't forget, the astringency can sneak up on you about 15 seconds later. Next, we're going to step into what our panelists typically provide for us with feedback in our sensory panels for our Roadsmary's Baby rum barrel-aged pumpkin ale, tongue twister. For visual, they're typically reporting a light brown color with 0 to low haze and a light brown foam. That visual, again, that's something that you're getting from those malt characteristics. And now on to the aroma. Sweet aromas, including caramel, vanilla, some spices, cinnamon and clove, and then the rum. Woody aromas, apple, cereal, and nutty aromas. And for taste, moderately sweet, low bitter, and low mineral. And mouthfeel, a medium body, moderate carbonation, low spicy, low astringency, and moderate moderate warming and low mouth watering. Boy, those two together are really tough. And key style attributes for a barrel-aged barrel-aged pumpkin ale. Visual, a light amber to light brown color. This can vary depending on what style of beer you're actually drinking. The base style might be a little bit different. It might be a darker beer. It might be a lighter beer. So that really varies. It depends on what the base style truly is. And for aroma, you'll get some warming spices, likely cinnamon, clove, or allspice, nutmeg even. Sweet aromas, likely vanilla, caramel, maple. Maple sounds really good. And from the barrel, you'll get some fresh oak, dried leaves, and woody notes. And if it's a rum barrel-aged beer, you're going to get that butter rum or other spirit type of characteristic. Maybe it could be a whiskey barrel or any other type of spirit barrel. And for taste, often low to moderate sweetness. And mouthfeel, a thin to medium body, low to moderate carbonation, high level of boozy alcohol, and some low to moderate astringency. I really love a barrel-aged beer because you do get that nice boozy alcohol characteristic that really just amplifies it.
And now we're going to swing back to Karen, who's going to take us through a nice little summary and remind us all of what we learned today and what's key to remember.
Wow, thank you for that, Jen and Ryan. I was playing along in the background, and I may have eaten us all out of jelly beans during that one aroma experience, but I think we can get more. With that, we're ready to continue your practice, your skills out in the world. Remember to take a look at the visual appearance when you see your beer is freshly poured, either out of a can bottle or from your local draft. Then don't forget to give it a sniff and a sip to get that aroma from both directions. You want orthonasal and retronasal to contribute to your overall picture of what that particular beer smells like. And then plug your nose and take that second sip to get the real taste and mouth feel for that extra contribution to your beer. And now you have the basic tools to evaluate beer and other food and drink in your everyday life. And thanks again for joining us tonight. We're really glad that we could share this information with you. We'd be happy to take some questions or comments if you have them. Please don't forget to submit them into the chat, and Grace will help us with moderation on that. If there's questions that overflow and we're not able to get to them, I threw my email up at the end of the presentation there, but you can find us on our website at tworoadsbrewing.com or email me at karen.stangl@tworoadsbrewing.com. And I would just want to give a special thanks to the team at Hop Culture Magazine and everyone here at Two Roads who helped make sure that we could smoothly have this presentation underway for you this evening. So thanks again, everybody, and cheers.
Cheers. Wow. Ken, Jen, Karen, and Ryan, thank you so much for taking us through that sensory workshop. I don't think I ever realized how many steps go into actually tasting and smelling and getting to know your beer. I feel like you guys become really great friends with the beer before you even taste it. So as Karen mentioned, I'd love for you guys to throw some of your questions into the comment section. We've already had some come through that I would love to get to here. So I'm going to pull some up on the screen as they come in. The first one that I want to touch on is actually, this is a question that I think is really kind of appropriate because we are, celebrating the achievements of women in craft beer, and Beers Without Beards is a women in craft beer festival. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more of your guys' thoughts on if you've observed, are there any trends between men and women and the different kinds of beer that they like, or do they even taste beer differently? Have you guys noticed any of those trends in the industry?
That's a great question, Rick. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm leaving my mask on because we're in closer proximity now to be on the screen. So because this is a Beers Without Beards festival, I'm not afraid to say that typically there are more women super tasters thought to be out in the world than male super tasters. Women tend to have a much more keen sense of differentiating aromas compared to men. But on the other hand, there are definitely what we call anosmias, or where you have an entire blank to any particular aroma, whether it be male or female characteristic. So some of us, even here at the brewery, are very keen on smelling a particular fermentation characteristic called diacetyl, and there are some of us here who can't smell it at all, whether it be male or female. So it does vary a little bit, but like I said, I'm not afraid to say that women are a little more keen and adept at the smelling part.
Yeah, I'll take that. I found that my wife in particular has a better nose than I do and can really pull out whenever we go tasting ourselves. She can, she just pulls out amazing aromas from the beer. So it's also individual, right? Sometimes there are things that I can't smell that she smells, and sometimes there are things that I smell that she doesn't smell. But that's exactly what you're saying, Jen, is that, you know, you guys are trained. And so if you've been tasting beers along with this workshop and you're not smelling exactly the notes that you guys had, you know, don't worry, because that's normal. And that kind of brings me to another question that I had for all of you. You know, how long did it take you for you guys really to refine your palates, and for people that are looking to, you know, further their education after this workshop, you know, how are you able to really get to that place where you have, or you're able to pull out those notes that you guys presented in the workshop?
So training is really an ongoing thing. You know, we're constantly training, and everybody's always getting better every day. So it really can vary a bit. Before I started in beer, I was a tea sensor for about 5 years. And when I first started, every black tea smelled the same to me. And by the time I finished, I could pick out most of them blind. So it really just takes time and practice. If you're practicing, you know, every day, like our panelists are, just smelling and evaluating beer, you'll get better at it a lot faster. And just the best way to do it at home, you know, every time you eat or drink something, take a second and think about what it tastes like and what it smells like. Really just give yourself time to think about all those different constituent parts of an aroma. So, you know, is your blackberry just a blackberry, or is it juicy? Is it tart? Does it have a fresh green aroma to it, like fresh leaves? Does it smell like sugar? And does it smell like, you know, juicy berry? Think about all those things that go into the different aromas of everything you eat, and it'll get a lot faster. You'll get better even faster. So
essentially we need to drink a lot of beer is what you're saying. I love it. It's all part of your job now. And mine too. Sometimes here at Hop Culture at the magazine, you know, people send me beer all the time, and it's something that, you know, is kind of a perk of working in the industry. But I think for everyone, you know, even if you're just out there drinking beer and getting to know it more intimately, you know, going to your local bottle shop or local brewery and just picking up some beer and bringing it home, and now being just a little bit more conscious of when you drink it, you know, thinking about what it smells like, what it tastes like, that kind of thing. And speaking of the ingredients that are sometimes found in beer, I wanted to pull up this question because I think it's a great one. What's the weirdest ingredient that you've seen added to a beer?
Anyone got one of those?
I find mushrooms to be intriguing. Mushrooms. There's like a heavy umami, but it's so satisfying.
Is there beer? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, definitely intrigued by a lot of the shellfish and oyster stouts that happen. Provides a different kind of a mouthfeel and like a salty, briny kind of under character that carries the flavor in a different way. And I have tried a mushroom beer that Ryan mentioned too. Goes really well in like a brown or a porter.
So I see an umami theme coming in here. I think this question leads nicely into the next one. I just have to find it. But someone asked about the new space that you guys opened, Area 2, recently. And I know over there, which is next door to you guys are doing some really kind of experimental things. So tell us a little bit more about what you guys are doing at Area 2 and some of those beers.
We're actually broadcasting from there this evening. The Area 2 site is, as you mentioned, experimental brews. So many different wood-aged, barrel-aged, foeder-aged, concrete-aged sours going on over here. Some wild yeast that we've caught, some blending and experimenting. Also, we'll do anything like a pastry stout that's aged in barrels happens over here. Pretty much anything that is not your typical malt, water, hops, yeast, beer that is brewed at the Two Roads side in the main production facility happens over here. And we do serve beers from each site at each location. They're literally right next to one another. There's a little paved walkway that says Area 2 this way. We'll take you from one site to another. It's a brand new facility, and if anyone ever gets a chance, we would love to host you here and have you check it out.
Yeah, I remember when I visited. It's really cool because you can go to the original Two Roads, and that brewery is kind of like it almost has more of like an older kind of local feel, like your local brew pub. and you can get, all the Two Roads beers there. And then, like you said, you just follow the sign, you walk through on a path, and you see the new Area 2 building. It's like new and modern and beautifully designed. And you kind of go upstairs, and it's this beautiful tap room, and you get to try all these kind of new experimental things. So it's all within the Two Roads brand, but it's two very distinct and different experiences. So, and then after you're done, you can go get some New Haven pizza, which is exactly what I did. So it was an amazing day. Have a question here from Mike on a little bit more of a technical question. So what aspects of the brewing process contribute to the clarity or the haziness of a beer?
Thanks for that question, Mike. That was a softball for me. I just did a presentation on hazy beers for the World Brewing Congress. So the haze craze that's come about is really a factor of these chemicals called polyphenols that bind together in the beer, and they don't settle out like yeast or a lot of the other hop particulates do. When you clarify it, they'll stay in there and they'll remain suspended in that liquid. And that is a factor of the hop oils mixing with a lot of the protein components from particular malts that have a lot of those haze generating polyphenols in them. So protein heavy malts like oats and wheat are particularly helpful in creating a haze in a beer. If you do want to make a very clear beer, then your malt bill will typically have much lower amounts of things like oats and wheat in them. They will have a lot of the typical barley malts that are kilned at different rates of time in order to, the longer that barley is kilned, the darker it'll be. So that's how it'll contribute to a darker color, but it will usually filter out or separate out into a much clearer beer, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And I think just kind of, if it's kind of getting into more the deeper aspects, right, of everything that we just went through in the workshop, because you told us how to, kind of test the clarity in your beer, how you hold it up to the light and you put your finger in front of it and see if you can see through. But what's the science behind that? What made the beer hazy or cloudy or whatnot? So thanks so much, Mike, for asking that question and getting us to look a little bit deeper into it. This is another great kind of question, I think, about the process that we just went through. So, Jen, you were saying through a lot of the workshop that, it was important to kind of like rest in between, if you started getting like an overload of your nose gets overloaded at some point, right? So if you have a flight, which I know are really popular at a lot of tap rooms, and you want to kind of taste each one, York County Ale Trail is asking, what's the best way to do that? Do you just kind of like do one at a time, take some rest, maybe get some crackers or candy in between? What's a good way to do that?
So there is a way to do it without, kind of doing this kind of thing. You're welcome to do it. And it actually looks really awesome. And it starts great conversations if you do the hand over your nose. But typically what I do when I'm drinking a flight and evaluating beer out in the wild is just do a quick version of it. I'm always sniffing my beer. Even if I don't realize that I'm sniffing my beer, I'm always sniffing it. Everyone's always telling me, every time you go to drink something, you're always sniffing it first. Well, that's where I'm getting my information from, is that sniff. So you are able to do the evaluation on it in a very quick way, and a way that maybe doesn't look too obvious that you're doing it. I usually don't plug my nose. I'll just hold my breath and I'll get that evaluation retronasal in that way.
Yeah, these are the little tips and tricks.
Yeah.
You guys know that are good to share with all of us.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add in too that, if you're worried about like getting overwhelmed in your sense of smell, just give yourself a 30 to 60 second break between beers. It really doesn't take long to reset your sense of smell. You can also sniff the back of your hand or your shoulder, because those are things you're smelling all the time anyway. So they really help to bring you back to a baseline. Also, you can always start with your lightest kind of color beer. Typically, it's usually going to be your lightest flavor, less heavy malts in it, and go into your darkest or heaviest flavored beer. And if you're in a sour facility, go from the least sour to the most sour. Help to balance out your flight as well, so you can still smell and taste everything appropriately.
Nice. Super, super helpful. There's something, Jen, that you said during your presentation that really stuck with me. And that was that when it comes to aroma, we associate a lot of aromas with memories. And I find that a lot with food too. People have these really distinct memories in their minds when it comes to smelling certain foods. And I think we're starting to see that with beer now. But David asked this really great question. It's really neat to find that you can connect flavors from food to your beer, but are there any tastes that are unique to beer? I know you spoke about minerality, and that's something that in wine, a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of Psalms or wine tasters or experts in wine, often talk about the minerality, and that seems kind of specific to that particular liquid. Is there anything or any flavors that are specific to beer?
I would say it's the same, like you could reverse that question, say if peanut butter was your sensory example. So like peanuts or peanut butter are a very specific aroma and flavor. And if you were to try to describe it without using those words, you have to think of other things that were similar in a group that if you combine them in some fashion, like ortho and retronasally and or with the taste background, you would be using words that would get you towards describing what the peanut butter flavor would be like, for example. So you kind of use the same thing for beer. There's a lot of times when I'll smell a beer in sensory and I'm like, this smells beery, but apply for what we're really looking for. But what it does is trigger my brain to, okay, it smells beery, so you're familiar with this style, which is the lighter end of this beer spectrum, something with lower ABV, lower amounts of malts, probably lighter hopped. But what does that mean? Okay, go back into your memory bank again. That means that it's a little bit grassy, maybe some hay and grass, maybe some light floral, maybe not a deep pine resin, but maybe a little bit of a pine or citrus aroma. So you just continue to make those connections through there and then ask yourself to keep digging a little bit deeper each time.
Yeah, it's funny. I took when I was in grad school, I took a wine class actually, and we literally had to go through kind of something similar, tasting the wine, all these different steps. And he'd always ask us at the end to describe, what the wine tasted like. And we would all be like, well, it tastes like apple or, mineral. And then we'd ask him to do it. And he would like swirl it around and take a sniff. And he'd be like, oh, it smells like this rock that I dropped in the pond on like a clear day that was like, had been skipped across he came up with all these like really descriptive words for it. But the point was that you have to like, force yourself to think deeper each time and go beyond that it tastes like beer. But what exactly are those flavors that you're pulling out? So again, Jen, as you were saying, just training yourself every time that you taste a new beer, push it a little bit more, come up with a few more descriptors, a few more flavor connections, that kind of thing. We have a couple minutes left. I would really love for you guys to maybe share some more about what's going on at Two Roads and what you guys have coming up on the horizon. Are there any exciting new beers or launches or anything that you guys want to share about what's going on in your neck of the woods?
So we can let you in on a couple of things. We do have a new Goza coming out. We packaged it this week, and we'll give you the sneak peek of the flavor. It's blueberry Meyer lemon flavored Goza. Tried it in sensory earlier this week, and it was pretty phenomenal. And I will also tell you that 'tis the season when holiday ale starts rolling into fermenter tanks. So at least for those two, you can keep your eyes open for them to start peeking out your horizons too.
Awesome. I'm actually drinking the passion fruit right now, which came in the Beers Without Beards VIP box. And as we were talking about earlier, I really love the Persian lime version as well. So I'm super excited to see how the blueberry, you said it was blueberry lemon?
Yeah, lemon.
Yeah. Oh, Meyer lemon. Nice. Perfect. Well, I think we've hit on a lot of the questions that I saw come up in the comments, but if you could just remind people, if they have other questions after the workshop, if there's any, the best way that they can get in touch with you or just drop you a line, if you guys could just remind everyone out there, what would be the best way to do that, to ask any other questions beyond this workshop?
Sure. On our website, you'll actually be able to find a section where you can email us, separate from just if you had a product concern. There's another site to get in contact with us there. And Jen and I are usually the two people that field that particular inquiries as they come through. So if you have another question, you can use our website and send us a comment there. Or I offered up my particular email. And so I think that our names are in the descriptions of this particular seminar. So it's just first and last name with a period in the middle at tworoadsbrewing.com.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys again, Karen, Ryan, and Jen, for walking us through that amazing workshop and doing it in such a cohesive way that really took us through step by step how you guys, you're the pros, how you guys taste beer. So I'm excited to take what I learned tonight into the future and into every beer, maybe not every, but most of the beers that I taste from now on. I just want to thank Two Roads for, again, joining us for this amazing workshop and for helping us kick off Beers Without Beards. So for everyone else that joined us, thanks so much for tuning in. We have programming continues tomorrow night. We have a virtual cooking class in collaboration with New Belgium and the Queer Food Foundation. We're making a mac and beer cheese. So very delicious, really excited for that. And then on Saturday, we have a full day of programming from beer and yoga to a beer cocktail class to a women in beer leadership roundtable. So if you haven't already, check us out, hopculture.com/BWOB20. We still have tickets available, and follow us at Hop Culture Mag. And that's it for tonight, guys. So hopefully we'll see you at some events during the rest of the week.